Hi. In this episode of How We Got Here, we're going to look at the origin of companies and the stock market. The word company has an interesting development. It originated with the Latin word companio, meaning one who eats bread with. Pan means bread and com means with. In the Middle Ages, companies were religious societies or orders created for not-for-profit purposes, such as charities, hospitals, education, and missions. Then there were craftsmen's or artisan guilds organized to regulate particular trades in a territory with innumerable rules intended to restrict competition. This was the origin of workers' unions. For-profit joint stock companies, as we know today, did not exist prior to the Reformation. In medieval Europe, it was a sin of usury to pay or receive interest. Therefore, if someone wanted to attempt an expensive endeavor, such as sailing around the world in search of spices, textiles, or luxury goods, they would have to petition a rich person or a monarch to underwrite it. Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, financed Columbus's voyage to get to India and China, though he ran into the Americas instead. Sir Walter Raleigh personally lost 30,000 pounds sterling attempting to settle the Roanoke colony in Virginia. After the Reformation, one of the first companies was the Company of Merchant Adventurers to New Lands, incorporated in England in 1553 under King Edward VI, outfitted with investments from 250 shareholders. They sent 3 ships north of Russia to find a way to China and the Moluccas Spice Islands of Indonesia. Unfortunately, their ships got stuck in the ice and the crews froze to death, except for a few who were rescued by Russians on dog sleds. The survivors were taken to Moscow, where they met Tsar Ivan the Terrible. The company was rechartered in 1555 as the Muscovy Company to trade with Moscow. It did not make much money. In 1581, British noblemen formed the Levant Company to trade with the Ottoman Turkish Empire. In 1583, they formed the Venice Company to trade on the Mediterranean Sea. The British East India Company was chartered by Queen Elizabeth I on December 31st, 1600. From the Far East, it transported tea, spices, salt, cotton, saltpeter, indigo blue dye, and opium. It grew to eventually account for half of the world's trade. In 1609, the Virginia Company was created, which founded Jamestown and later the Plymouth Colony. The British founded the Hudson Bay Company in 1670, which traded with Indians for fur and at one time owned 1/3 of the landmass of modern-day Canada. Companies were a win-win for the king. He would grant a monopoly to a company for a certain trade. He would risk nothing, but he would get a percentage of what came back into England. It was similar to the letter of marque granted to privateers who pirated Spanish ships for gold in the Caribbean. But upon returning to England, the privateers would give a percentage of their prize to the monarchs, who would ask no questions as to where it came from. The largest and most financially successful company was a joint stock company called the Dutch East India Company, founded in 1602. Where England's companies were an association of wealthy individuals, the Dutch set it up where common individuals, such as bakers, blacksmiths, farmers, etc., could pool their money, similar to crowdfunding, and invest in a ship going to Indonesia in search of nutmeg, cloves, mace, tea, coffee, silk, sugarcane, grain, rice, soybean, porcelain, or textiles. When the ship returned filled with valuable goods, the stockholders would share in the profit and get paid a dividend. The Dutch added the feature that allowed individuals to trade their shares of stock. It was called the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, the very first of its kind in the world. One important feature of joint stock corporations was limited liability, meaning that if the ship sank or was captured by pirates, shareholders only lost the amount they invested and were not responsible for any additional liability or damages. But what if a ship was taken or sank, or the business failed, or was taken in battle or captured by Barbary pirates? Well, in that case, the Dutch invented the first insurance companies, right, to cover the loss. By 1612, the Dutch East India Company had become the first intercontinental trade corporation. Within the next 2 centuries, its profits grew to eclipse all other companies combined, being considered the most valuable company ever in world history. The Dutch also experienced the first stock market crash. This is interesting. It's called the Tulip Mania of 1636 and 37. Tulips were imported from Turkey, and they became so popular that a single tulip bulb was worth more than an average person's yearly salary. Then suddenly the tulip mania stopped, and the price of tulip bulbs dropped to 1/100th of its value, plunging the country into an economic depression. Well, the Dutch came back, and over time, the city of Amsterdam became Europe's leader in shipping, banking, insurance, and commerce. The Dutch Republic had 2,000 ships, more than England and France combined. This period was called the Dutch Golden Age, as by the 17th century, Amsterdam became the wealthiest city in the Western world. The Netherlands became a global leader in trade, science, art, and military. This allowed them to fight and win an 80-year war of independence from Spain, from 1568 to 1648. In 1621, the Dutch West India Company was founded. It sent Henry Hudson sailing west in hopes of finding a water route to India and China through North America. Though unsuccessful, Henry Hudson claimed the land along the Hudson River and founded the New Netherlands colony, receiving its charter June 3rd, 1621. In its new settlement, the Dutch began a new Amsterdam Stock Exchange, and it met on the street next to the wall of their fort, thus the origin of New York's Wall Street. In 1664 is when New Amsterdam was taken over by the British, and it went from New Amsterdam to New York. But Wall Street still was the place where they would trade shares of stock. The governor of the Dutch colony, Peter Minuit, gave 60 guilders of brass buttons, scarlet cloth, and trade goods to the Manhattan Indian tribe in exchange for all of Manhattan Island. Well, the articles for the New Netherlands Company, issued by the Chamber in Amsterdam, 1624, stated, "They shall, within their territory, practice no other form of divine worship than that of the Reformed religion," the Dutch Reform, "and thus by their Christian life and conduct seek to draw the Indians and other blind people to the knowledge of God and his word, without, however, persecuting any on account of his faith, but leaving each one the use of his conscience." New Netherlands' original Charter of Freedoms and Exemptions, June 1st, 1629, stated, "Patroons," which were the landholders, "and colonists shall in particular and in the speediest manner endeavor to find out ways and means whereby they may support a minister and a schoolmaster, that thus the service of God and zeal for religion may not grow cool and be neglected among them. And they shall, for the first procure a comforter of the sick there. Several Dutch companies approached the Pilgrims to settle New Amsterdam on behalf of the Dutch Republic, but the Pilgrims decided to sail under a patent from England's London Company, which was a branch of the Virginia Company. The Pilgrims settled Massachusetts. Company bylaws were drawn up by investors called adventurers who loaned money for the Pilgrim's trip. They expected to be paid back with a profit. Ironically, the bylaws of this company set up a communal system for the first 7 years, in which all capital and profits remained in ye common stock. And William Bradford records these bylaws. The adventurers and planters do agree that every person that goeth being aged 16 years and upward be accounted a single share of stock. The persons transported and ye adventurers shall continue their joint stock and partnership together, ye space of 7 years, during which time all profits and benefits that are got by trade, traffic, trucking, working, fishing, or any other means of any person or persons shall remain still in ye common stock. That all such persons are of this colony are to have their meat, drink, apparel, and all provision out of ye common stock and goods. That at the end of 7 years, ye capital and profits, these are the houses, lands, goods, and chattel be equally divided betwixt adventurer and planter. Well, the Pilgrim governor, William Bradford, describes in Of Plymouth Plantation that the sharing of all profits and benefits in ye common stock, regardless of how hard each individual worked, was a failure. He wrote, the failure of that experiment of communal service, which was tried for several years by good and honest men, proves the emptiness of the theory of Plato and other ancients applauded by some of latter times, that the taking away of private property and possession of it in community by a commonwealth would make a state happy and flourishing, as if they were wiser than God. For in this instance, community of property was found to breed much confusion and discontent, and retard much employment, which would have been to the general benefit. For the young men who were most able and fit for service objected to being forced to spend their time and strength in working for other men's wives and children without any recompense. William Bradford continued, the strong man or the resourceful man had no more share of food, clothes, etc., than the weak man who was not able to do a quarter the other could. This was thought injustice. The aged and graver men, who were ranked and equalized in labor, food, clothes, etc., with the humbler and younger ones, thought it some indignity and disrespect for them. As for men's wives, who were obliged to do service for other men, such as cooking, washing their clothes, etc., they considered it a kind of slavery, and many husbands would not brook it. Bradford explains that the communistic plan of redistributing wealth failed. It did abolish those very relations which God himself had set among men, and greatly diminished the mutual respect that is so important should be preserved amongst them. Let none argue that this is due to human failing rather than to this communistic plan of life in itself. Bradford described how the Pilgrims switched to allow individuals to have their own property, after which they could be charitable to each other. He writes, I answer, seeing that all men have this failing in them, that God in his wisdom saw that another plan of life was fitter for them. So they began to consider how to raise more corn, obtain a better crop than they had done, so they might not continue to endure the misery of want. At length, after much debate, the governor, with the advice of the chief among them, allowed each man to plant corn for his own household. So every family was assigned a parcel of land, according to the proportion of their number. This was very successful. It made all hands very industrious, so that much more corn was planted than otherwise would have been by any means the governor or any other could devise, and saved him a great deal of trouble and gave far better satisfaction. The women now went willingly into the field and took their little ones with them to plant corn, while before they would allege weakness and inability, and to have compelled them would have been thought great tyranny and oppression. So the Pilgrims themselves switched from this communal communistic plan to capitalism, with everyone owning their own land, producing their own food, after which they could be charitable with each other and have an abundant Thanksgiving. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of companies and the stock market and how we got here. God bless you.